So this is the PC chair report for STOC business meeting. I'm going to start with statistics. We had 440 submitted papers. Out of them, 10 were withdrawn, and we accepted 113. Out of them, there were 3 pairs of soft merges. So this means that the 2 papers are separate, but the talk is just 1 talk. And the acceptance rate is about 26%. So here's the data, how this compares to previous years. As you can see, the number of submissions has been slowly but steadily growing. The acceptance rate stayed about the same, maybe went down a little bit. We had a pretty large PC. There were 36 PC members, and with this number of submissions, the average load was about 38 papers to review for every PC member. We also had a large number of reviewers, almost 700. This is the size of program committee by the year. So if we compare with previous years, except for that 1 year when there was a 2-tier PC, the size of the PC has been also growing quite a bit. I have decided to have a large program committee because I wanted to make sure that the load is reasonable. So this is both to ensure that PC members have better experience and also that each paper gets more attention. So this also helps achieve better coverage of different areas and ensure diversity in the PC in various dimensions. I feel that the current system of the flat PC is close to its limit. It gets harder for a single person to manage such a big PC. And also it gets harder to have a good discussion at the PC meeting with such a large PC and so many submissions. So my feeling is that if we want our community to continue to grow, we want to allow more submissions, to be able to handle more submissions and to accept more papers. Basically, there is no choice but to consider a multi-tier system. So I want to make one suggestion, a new suggested structure. It's not very different from what we have right now. So it's going to be a relatively gradual transition to a 2-tier system. So there's still going to be a single PC chair. Then there's going to be an executive committee or area chairs containing about 5 to 6 people, and then program committee of about 40 people, so just a little bit bigger than what we have right now. So this is not very radically different from what we have right now, but maybe this would allow us to handle more submissions and to be more efficient. So now how the whole process worked, it was pretty standard. So first there was bidding. PC members bid on submissions, declare conflict of interest, then assignment of reviews. So every paper was assigned to 3 PC members, and on average, every PC member was assigned about 38 papers. We also had asynchronous correspondence with authors. So whenever reviewers pointed out some mistake maybe in the paper, or they said that results follow from previous work, things like that, I felt we should run it by the authors just to err on the side of caution, so that to make sure that we are not the ones who are making mistakes. So we don't have rebuttals, and these messages that they were sent back and forth by me on an ad hoc manner. And I'm wondering whether we should have a more official built-in way to do this, also to ensure that the papers are all treated more uniformly. There was, as usual, online discussion where some tentative decisions and rankings were made. And then there was an in-person 2-day PC meeting in Chicago at the beginning of February. So the PC meeting was very intense because it's a lot of papers to discuss in a very limited time frame. And also with the large size of the PC, such meetings do become more challenging. So for the future, it may be good to rethink how this PC meeting should work, because I feel with the current system, we're close to its limit of what can be done in a 2-day PC meeting. So I wanted to offer a few thoughts on future conferences. So I already talked about PC size and PC structure, and also that we may want to rethink a PC meeting. So a few words about allowing PC submissions. As far as I know, they were allowed for the first time last year in 2019. And I consulted with many people in the community and heard many arguments for and against. And at the end, I decided not to allow PC submissions. So partly I was convinced by the against arguments, and partly I just feel that it's a big decision and I would be more comfortable if the whole community decides about it. So maybe it's time to discuss this. A few words about conflict of interest policy. So currently it is decided by each PC chair, and as such it differs from year to year. So I think it would be good to have a uniform policy that, for example, CGAC formulates and thinks through, that is followed consistently by every conference, by every STOC. And last thing that I wanted to mention is what they call confidentiality policy. This is something that I introduced. So we have some unspoken set of rules that we expect PC members and reviewers to obey, but they're not really spelled out anywhere. So different people, they may have different rules in their heads, and also they may not even know that they're expected to follow these rules. So I think it would be good to have a single consistent policy that is consistent from conference to conference. So here is an example of what I mean. So the first two rules here, they're pretty standard. It basically says that all STOC submissions must be treated as confidential, and that PC discussion should be also confidential and not leaked out. The third and the fourth rules, there may be a little more controversial because it's difficult to formulate them in such a way that everybody will be happy, and also that they correctly address every possible case that may arise. But at the same time, I do feel we need to have such rules. And for example, we can also consult an SF policy that I think has a similar set of rules in order to formulate our own set of rules. So a few words about holding the conference online. So this was the first time when STOC, or I think any other theory conference, was held online. So we got a pretty short notice and there was not much time to plan. So we just tried to do our best under the circumstances. And the jury obviously is still out on how well it went and how well online conferences work in general. And obviously there are many advantages to holding conferences in person. However, there are also some advantages to online conferences. For one, it's cheaper for both the organizers and the participants, and it's much easier to participate. So this is the data on the number of participants in previous years. And this year, the number of participants was much higher. There were over 600 registered participants, and they come from 33 countries. So if you want to see, these are the countries where they come from. So online format is also an opportunity to reach out to more people, to people who normally wouldn't participate. For example, people from faraway countries, or graduate students who maybe cannot afford to travel to the conference. We can also try to reach out and make some events for undergraduates or even for high schoolers. People from different research areas, it may be easier for them to pop in for a couple of talks. It's lesser of a time commitment than to travel to a conference. And also people who can't normally travel for whatever reason. So I wanted to make a radical suggestion just to put it out there, maybe to think about for the future. And my suggestion is to hold STOC twice a year, once in person as part of Theory Fest and once online. So my motivation is that if we want our community to continue to expand and to grow, we need to be able to handle more submissions, and we want to accept more papers, I think. So this would allow us to do this without changing the current model by much. So we can still keep the current structure that the conference is really small and cohesive, and so is the PC. At the same time, we can reap the benefits of both online and in-person conferences. So anyway, this is just a suggestion of things to think about for the future. And this concludes my thoughts on future conferences. And now changing gears, I would like to thank all people who made the conference happen. First and foremost, I'd like to give huge thanks to the STOC Program Committee. So they worked really hard with dedication, perseverance, and enthusiasm throughout this difficult process. For me, it was really a pleasure and a privilege to work with such a great set of people. I want to give huge thanks to the local organizers, Gautam Kamath, Kostya Makarichev, Yuri Makarichev, and Madhur Tulsiani, for the really outstanding job that they did. So they originally had the whole conference planned out to be held in Chicago. And then at a very short notice, they had to scrap everything and start planning for an online conference. So again, this is the first time that STOC, or probably any other theory conference, is done completely online. So there was no history, no prior knowledge that they could use. So they had to figure out every single detail from scratch on their own. So in my opinion, they have done an outstanding job, and I'm personally in awe of all the work that they have done. I also feel that I was really lucky to be able to work with this really great team. Also, huge thanks to the student volunteers who are listed here. So this year, student volunteers were playing an especially major role, and they had to do a lot more work than usual, while being probably less visible than usual. So their help in organizing and running this conference was really invaluable. I would also like to give my special thanks to Paul Beam, Chandra Chakuri, Edith Cohen, and Sanjeev Khanna. So they were my sounding board, and I went to them whenever I needed advice with whatever situation that was arising. And they were really always there for me. So I honestly don't know how I would have done it without them. I'm also really grateful to previous PC chairs of various conferences, some of whom are listed here, who are very generous with their time and their advice. Their help was very useful. I would also like to thank Theory Fest chair Tim Rovgarden, SIGACT chair Samir Kuller, and the whole SIGACT executive committee who helped to plan this conference. And also thanks to Irene Froley from ACM. I would also like to thank all reviewers for their important work. And I would also like to thank sponsors of STOC 2020, Google, Microsoft, and TTIC. Last but not least, I want to thank you all for submitting papers, for participating, and for making STOC happen. Thank you.